For this week's Preppin data, we're starting our challenge from where we got to last week. So we've got to the stage where for each of our accounts, we can see what the balance is on any particular day. Although that's not exactly true, is it? Because if I choose, for example, with this account number, the 1st of February, I don't actually have a row to understand what the balance value was on that day. And as humans, logically, we can just think, okay, well, then the balance would remain as it was on the 31st of January. But unfortunately, that's not going to work with the current data structure. So we need a row for each of those days instead. And where we've got these duplicate rows, so say for example for the 4th of February here, we've got two different rows, we're just going to sum those together for now. So we're going to make this challenge slightly easier on ourselves, and we're going to use an aggregate step. We're going to group on all the values. We're going to group on the account number and the balance date, and we're going to sum the balance and sum the transaction value together, just so that it makes our lives a little bit easier. Much like last week, we're going to create ourselves a transaction order. So we're going to rank that balance date, grouping by the account number, so we know what order the transactions happen in, or the order of the dates that we have available to us, basically. And then what we're going to do is we're going to branch off and we're going to update our transaction order, and we're going to -1 from it. Now, the reason that we're going to do this is we actually want to get to a stage where we have, for each of our account numbers, we want the next date that's available in the data set to be on the same row so that we can scaffold between these two dates. Okay? And I need to then -1 from this. So the reason that I'm minusing 1 from this balance date is, of course, if I think about my example that I had before, I've got the 31st of January and I've got the 2nd of February. I only actually need one row to be generated between those two. I just need the 1st of February to be generated. So actually, I'm minusing 1 because I don't want the 2nd of February to be generated as well. I already have that value. Okay, and then I've just got to change this data type to a date rather than date time, and I'm just removing that other field. So I called this my balance date upper bound. Okay, and then I'm joining that data set back to itself. I'm doing a left join here, so I'm making sure that I keep in all of those last final transactions that don't have a next transaction to be put up on the same row. So that's why it's a left join here. So I'm just making sure my account number is equal to my my account number is equal to my account number, and my transaction order is equal to my transaction order here. Okay. So I go ahead and I do that, and I'm just looking at my data here. I'm not really making any changes, removing a couple of fields that are duplicated that I don't need, and then I'm making sure that with this upper bound for these null values, so this is all of my final dates in the data set, I actually then want to make sure that they have an upper bound value, which is the maximum date that exists in the entire data set. So I'm going to calculate that using an LOD. So it's just looking at that balance date field, finding the max value, so that's the 14th of February, and then doing a quick calculation to say if my upper bound is null, then replace it with the maximum date in the data set so that I can do that scaffolding, and each of my rows will go up to the 14th of February. Each of my accounts, will go up to the 14th of February. Then it's a simple case of feeding this data into the new rows step, so using the values from two fields, and I'm doing the balance date is less than or equal to the balance date upper bound. I'm just naming that new field date, and it's going to be a day increment, so each time we add a new row, it's a new day, and then copying the values from the previous row, so we get the previous balance coming up. So let's filter to a particular account here, and I can see the new rows that get generated. So now I have one for the 1st of February, 3rd of February, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's working exactly how I want it to. And actually, my account numbers are all now uniform in how many numbers of rows they have. So that's actually worked exactly how I wanted to, which is great. Okay, so I just need to update my transaction values for those new rows. So if I take a look, for example, at this particular table, for example, then I can see that the new rows generated between the 2nd of February and the 5th of February, these new rows, then I can see that I'm getting repeated transactions. So that's not what I want to be happening. I don't want to have repeated transactions on those days. Sorry, these ones are the non-new generated rows, aren't they? It's the ones in bold that are the generated rows. So we'll look at these. So between the 4th and the 5th of February here, then I get these repeated rows. Okay, so I want to update that. So I'm just saying, if my balance date is equal to that date that I've just generated in my new rows, then give it to the transaction value. That's fine. Otherwise, give it a null. So if that date was already existing in my data set, then that's fine. Keep that transaction value, else give it a null. And then I can see in this data set here, for example, I've got a lot more null values, but we didn't have a lot of those dates in the existing data set. So for example, if I find the 1st of February, sorry, I need to look over in this column, don't I? Then I see it here, and now it has a null, which is great. But I can see that the balance has been filled down. Awesome. Now I've got to go ahead and create my date parameter, which is something frustrating that Tableau Prep can't do. It can't create a date type parameter. Ugh. So I had to duplicate my date field and turn it into a string, and then go ahead and create my parameter. So I called it selector date, and I've just got it here as the current value. I did it as a list. You would notice that I didn't write in all 15 dates. I was feeling a little bit lazy. That's okay. Just do a few so that we can check that it's working. I add a filter, so filtering selector date equals to date -1, and then removing all those date fields from the view. So when I hit run, it's going to ask me to select a date, and then I can just choose whatever date I want and run the workflow for that date. And now you can see that it's outputting the name of the date in there. So balance as of selector date. Okay, so hopefully that was a fun challenge, and thank you very much for watching.